Uncertainty often rushes in before sunrise, tying your stomach in knots of quiet chaos, and you wonder how to greet a day that already feels overcrowded. Yet in this fragile, hushed gentle pause spreads across the sky like pale silk, inviting you to surrender unfinished agendas and rest beneath the wide wings of the One who shapes alignment out of disorder. He is the steadfast architect who orders steps across shifting sands and ushers in a soft dawn that no turmoil can dim. For God is not a God of confusion, but of peace. 1 Corinthians 14:33. These words remind you that divine presence does not merely silence storms. It weaves their very winds into pathways of calm purpose, establishing sacred order where panic once reigned. What burden edges to the front of your mind, pleading to be solved by hurried effort? Which quiet longing could bloom today if placed into hands that never misplace what you entrust? Now, as your heart grows still, we step into the first movement of holy reordering. Chaos feels like an untamed tide swelling inside your chest long before the alarm stirs. You wake and every headline, notification, and unfinished conversation floods in, clamoring for an answer that is not yet ready to be given. Even the room's dim hush vibrates with invisible demands, as though wild wings beat against the window, insisting you start running before feet have met the floor. In this first watch of morning, you recognize that naming the swirl is the first mercy. Acknowledge it, and you loosen its grip. Now breathe. Let the inhale stretch all the way to your shoulders, and notice how the very act of drawing breath is a sign that the Maker remains nearer than pressure. The exhale becomes a holy broom, sweeping away what refuses to fit in today's grace-bound frame. Picture your thoughts lining up like scattered papers gathered into one clean folder on the desk of heaven. As the eastern horizon hints at ultramarine, invite God to stand at the center of the storm within. You can almost hear him speak the same words he once uttered over cosmic waters. Let there be light. And immediately inner darkness recedes. You feel the pulse of his orderliness knitting stray worries into a quiet pattern you do not yet understand, but already trust. Lean into Psalm 40:60 Sem Eoyi. Be still and know that I am God. Stillness is not inactivity, it is disciplined attention. Knowing is not data collection, it is relationship. Under the authority of this verse, your racing thoughts lose their footing and slide into silence. Ask yourself, which three concerns demand attention first, and what happens if you hand them to divine wisdom instead? What possibility might arise if tasks wait until peace dictates their sequence? Momentum will try to break this contemplative seal, yet you are learning to love the margin between waking and doing. Feel the steady rhythm of your pulse slowing as purpose replaces panic. Hear the kettle whistle. Let it. Nothing cracks when priorities are held by eternal hands. Window panes now blush with amber. Birds rehearse their ancient liturgy, proving that the world can sing while unfinished business remains. You are permitted to smile before schedules are solved. Lift your face and sense the spirit threading serenity through muscles and memories alike, promising that nothing necessary will be forgotten once it has passed through his ordering gaze. So stand, stretch, and place your feet flat on the floor, an intentional stance declaring that chaos does not command you. A new architecture for this day has already been drafted in heaven's archives, and you will walk it line by line, As you step onward, the air feels lighter, not because tasks have vanished, but because hierarchy has returned. God first, everything else finds its place beneath. Carry this holy blueprint with you like an inner compass. When emails pile, answer them in the cadence of grace. When traffic jams, breathe liturgy into the horn's impatience. When voices clash, let ordered truth sift every response. What begins as private quiet will ripple outward, structuring meetings, errands, even pauses for laughter, until by evening you can look back and trace a visible line from dawn's altar to dusk's amen. A testament that order was not forced, but gifted. You linger at the window and notice how the newborn light pauses on every surface, as though the entire landscape inhales with you, holding breath before the day's first step. In this hush you choose culture simplicity. Instead of scrolling for headlines, you let sparrows dictate the tempo, their thin notes encouraging slower rhythm inside your chest. The world beyond the glass may already be plotting urgency, yet within these four walls you establish a sanctuary of deliberate stillness where nothing enters uninvited. Your spine lengthens, shoulders soften, and eyelids lower just enough to narrow the field of vision to what matters: heartbeat, breath, presence. This is no escapist denial. It is strategic retreat into higher wisdom that calibrates every later decision. The kettle clicks off, releasing fragrant steam like incense curling toward an unseen altar, and you interpret the swirl as visual prayer. Fingers wrap around the warm cup, grounding you in tangible grace, heat radiating into palms as quiet assurance that divine nearness is not a theory but a felt reality. You picture a cosmic conductor tapping the stand, summoning silence so the next movement can begin in perfect timing. Your compliance becomes an act of worship greater than hectic productivity. Sabbath moments do not always span 24 hours. Sometimes they fit inside 10 intentional minutes that redraw the interior map of the soul. In returning and rest you shall be saved. In quietness and trust shall be your strength. So Isaiah 30 with Fiv. The ancient promise does not glorify inertia. It highlights the potency of restrained energy. Strength grows not by relentless motion, but by alignment with rhythms older than sunrise, where returning precedes conquering and trust outweighs adrenaline. Ask the room 2 questions aloud, letting each syllable settle like dew on tender grass. Which voice most competes for your allegiance this morning? And what would happen if you postponed its demands until peace grants permission? Which forgotten delight? Writing a note, tasting honey, walking barefoot across cool tiles, might recapture wonder if you protect this breathing space. Notice how curiosity opens windows wider than fear ever could. With every sip, allow gratitude to anchor the moment, list silently the faces, lessons, and provisions that formed yesterday's mosaic, and feel the mosaic expand. Gratitude is order's favorite scaffold. It supports new levels of clarity without creaking beneath weighty expectation. The clock ticks, but you refuse to glorify the tick. You glorify the one who invented time and can stretch it like soft dough to feed multitudes of obligations. Clouds blush peach above rooftops, signaling that the pause is doing invisible work, stilling internal seas so your next command can sail straight without corrective detours. When the cup empties, resist the reflex to sprint. Instead, place the mug down as if laying a cornerstone. an act declaring that everything you build today will rest on the measured cadence of grace. Draw one final deep breath. Feel lungs expand like unfurled sails, and release it slowly, relinquishing residual tension that masquerades as readiness. You exit the room not as someone behind schedule, but as a steward of sacred geometry, aware that even footsteps can trace quiet arcs of worship across busy floors. The pause ends, yet its echo lingers, promising that whenever chaos circles back, you possess a practiced doorway into calm. You reach for a well-worn notebook where neat lists whisper confidence, yet the ink already feels brittle under dawn's tender glow. One strong breeze could scatter every intention across the floor. Instead of tightening your grip, you hinge the cover back and imagine each line dissolving into soft mist that seeps beyond your grasp, rising toward the author of time. The gesture feels counterintuitive, like releasing a kite before tying its string. Yet a quiet wisdom reminds you that even kites soar best when carried by higher currents. You stand at the threshold between self-drafted agendas and heaven, breathe design, heartbeats echoing the truth that surrender is not loss, but holy exchange. As the horizon shifts from rose to gold, you open your palms, picturing every appointment, chore, and dream resting like breadcrumbs on your lifeline. One by one they lift, caught by an imperceptible updraft that bears them to a throne more trustworthy than any day planner. Clouds stretch into corridors above rooftops, hinting that there is room for all that matters and gentle pruning for what does not. Your breath deepens, ribs create space for unexpected guidance. For a moment you wonder whether anything productive will happen if control slips away, yet an inner nudge replies that productivity without purpose is just decorated fatigue. Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge Him, and He will make your path straight. Proverbs 3:5-6, straight does not always mean easy, it means aligned. Your steps may still climb, but they will no longer wander through bramble that ambition planted overnight. The verse invites you to trade guesswork for guided momentum, to move when nudged and wait when silence hums brighter than action. Now survey the cleared interior landscape like a freshly tilled field. It waits for seed chosen by wiser fingers. Ask which expectation weighs most heavily, because it was never yours to carry. Which aspiration, once bright, has faded under obligation's glare, and now longs for resurrection in a different form. Listen for subtle answers, a memory of laughter, a half-forgotten gift, a face that flickers across your mind, signposts pointing toward divine redirection. Let these hints linger without forcing immediate blueprints. Patience is part of the architecture. Some tasks remain, yet they arrange themselves into gentle sequences, each cue sliding into place like notes on a well-scored hymn. You discover that relinquished plans do not vanish, they recalibrate, adopting timing that honors both calling and capacity. Even the interruption you feared, a sick child, a stalled commute, can metamorphose into a doorway for compassion or creativity that original scheduling never predicted. The day grows supple, its hours bending like willow branches rather than snapping under wind. You tie shoelaces, feeling purpose thread through simple motions. A robin lands on the balcony rail, tilts its head as though curious about the new order pulsing from your pulse. then lifts off with a confident trill. That small witness affirms what your spirit senses. The universe obeys choreography far grander than private calendars, and you are invited into the dance. Step forward lightly. Tasks will find you at the exact intersection of preparedness and grace. By the time sunlight fully bathes the room, your notebook lies open yet blank, awaiting fresh ink that will flow only after each moment's listening. You turn the page, ready to script in partnership rather than solitary striving, trusting that every line drafted alongside divine counsel will carry enough oxygen to breathe life into others, as well as yourself. Dawn expands across the ceiling like liquid gold, finding every forgotten corner. And you realize the world outside the window has slipped into perfect symmetry without your instruction. Dew pearls align on grass blades. Traffic lights switch in choreographed sequence. Even drifting clouds keep measured distance as though an unseen plumb line governs their drift. This silent intelligence invites you to welcome the same calibration inside ribs and synapses, exchanging unrest for measured harmony. The refrigerator hum, the ticking clock, the neighbor's dog, all merge into a subtle metronome, guiding interior posture. You whisper yes beneath breath, granting permission for spirit surveyors to adjust load, bearing beams, and shave irregular edges of attitude, until motives lock flush against mercy. Alignment aches only where stubborn angles resist, yet relief blooms the moment tension softens. Every correction multiplies capacity for joy. Duty no longer drags, because calling now fits bone structure. Tasks fit like dovetail joints rather than splinters. He is before all things, and in him all things hold together. See Colossians 1:19. Holding together is more than preventing collapse. It fuses disparate parts into living tapestry where each thread receives purpose from proximity to the center. Invite this cohesive force to reconcile what feels incompatible. Professional drive with relational tenderness. Strategic foresight with spontaneous compassion. Picture strands of color weaving through a loom, crossing at right angles yet never tangling, because tension balances on both warp and weft. Inhale, feeling lungs stretch horizontally. Exhale, sensing spine lengthen vertically. Body mirroring the cross-shaped geometry of heaven. Ask gently which habit nudges you off true north. What small practice might act as counter, weight returning the compass to steady bearing. Perhaps your phone rests face down until breakfast gratitude is voiced, or the calendar leaves 15 breathing minutes between meetings for recalibration prayer. Small hinges swing wide doors. Miniature alignments accumulate into continuous corridor of peace. Sunlight now pools on the desk where a blank page waits for an amended blueprint. You resist the urge to crowd it. Instead, draw a single line down the center. Left column labeled what matters, right column labeled what can wait. Words arrive unhurried, guided by an inner level that keeps sentences from slanting toward vanity. Unexpected items migrate to the waiting side, freeing mental bandwidth for whispered assignments you would have missed if your timeline stayed jammed. When feet carry you toward the doorway, each stride feels intentional, heel, toe pattern echoing a heart that drums steady 4 count of grace. Posture lifts, gaze clears. Anticipated interactions grow kinder because soul architecture already anticipates them. Gratitude tugs mouth into effortless smile, face realigning to mirror interior harmony. Reaching curbside for commute, city clatter surges like restless sea yet cannot yank you off square. Horns, sirens, overlapping chatter, all flow around in tributaries that respect the channel carved by ordered mind. Turmoil washes past without residue. You advance calmly, living evidence that planets are not the only spheres guided by invisible gravity. An aligned heart can pull an entire day into orbit around peace. Later, when afternoon shadows lengthen and schedules threaten to skew, you will remember this moment's sunlight on notebook, lungs filled with deliberate cadence, verse humming at cellular level. You will pause mid-corridor, re-square shoulders, whisper realign, and feel unseen hands rotate inner compass once more toward cardinal mercy. Alignment is not one-time miracle. It is continual turning toward true center. Your shoes meet pavement that still gleams with dew, and every muted footfall feels choreographed by someone who walked this route before dawn conceived its first hue. Street lamps blink out one by one, like redundant sentinels dismissed because daylight has taken command. You recognize a metaphor in their humble retreat. Guidance evolves as illumination grows. You no longer lunge into errands, you pace them, letting invisible cadence dictate when to quicken, when to pause. Even the stray leaf skittering across asphalt seems to keep tempo with an orchestrated pilgrimage that threads alleyway, office lobby, grocery aisle, and kitchen table into one seamless liturgy of motion. You recall ancient assurance. The steps of a good person are ordered by the Lord, and He delights in their way. See Psalm 37:7-7-3. Delight is the surprising word. It paints guidance not as clinical GPS, but as joyful partnership. A creator smiling at every obedient stride, even the hesitant shuffle. Ask yourself, which segment of today's journey has most intimidated you? A tense meeting, a crowded commute, a fragile conversation. Imagine that stretch lit from above like a runway, each rectangle of light appearing only when the soul ahead touches down. Fear shrinks when sequence is provided minute by minute rather than demanded in full blueprint. You walk your dog, noticing how the leash slackens when trust aligns, how both of you veer naturally around puddles without jerky correction. The image brands itself upon memory, companionship sets rhythm, tension arises only when one partner surges ahead. Traffic thickens, yet impatience never lands, because you sense timing hidden inside red lights. You drum steering wheel to the beat of your redeemed pulse. Blessing unknown travelers you will never meet yet somehow influence by refusal to join ambient haste. The pedestrian who scurries across your halted lane is unknowingly served by your yielded brake. Divine order multiplies courtesy. At the office door you linger half, breath offering threshold as altar, may every report, handshake, and email proceed according to sacred tempo rather than anxious improvisation. The knob turns easily, as though stagehands have oiled it for smooth entry. Inside tasks queue politely like guests awaiting welcome. You triage with calm authority, guided by quiet inner nods. Answer this message now. Let that proposal marinate until afternoon. Pause for water because even diligence needs hydration. Coworkers notice serenity radiating from your desk and unconsciously match pace. Their own syllables slowing to meet yours. Order proves contagious. A ripple of measured civility spreads through cubicles, taming collective stress without single lecture uttered. When unexpected glitch surfaces, a corrupted file, a shipment delay. You treat it like fog on a trail, reduce speed, keep eyes on markers, trust that clarity returns. Small course corrections prevent large detours. Lunch break arrives not as escape, but scheduled Sabbath between labors. You step outdoors, letting sun recalibrate vision. Ants navigate concrete cracks in precise caravans, reinforcing lesson that size does not negate strategy. You find bench, break bread, offer silent thanks for rhythmic nourishment. Afternoon meetings follow, and minutes unfold with balanced mix of dialogue and quiet discernment. You speak when insight bubbles, listen when others sow wisdom. By dusk, planner shows fewer check marks than ambition once demanded, yet spirit feels lighter, because each stroke represents obedience, not compulsion. Walking home beneath violet sky, you realize ordered steps have rendered distance irrelevant. Journey has become destination. Even fatigue carries harmony, a satisfied ache like strings settling after symphony. You slip keys into lock, blessed by knowledge that tomorrow's map rests, secure in the same hands that inked today's path. You stand on the threshold of a fully awakened horizon, noting how gentle light settles over rooftops like a final benediction, sealing every earlier surrender into lasting calm. The orchestra of traffic hums softly in the distance. Yet within you spreads a hush so deep it absorbs the noise rather than competes with it. Fingers trace the rim of a cooling mug, and that simple circle reminds you that grace has no jagged edges. Whatever began in chaos now curves into completeness. You step onto the porch and witness dew evaporate in slow spirals. Silent testimony that burdens, once yielded, rise into invisible hands and leave the ground unscarred. Breathing deeply, you realize that peace is not merely the absence of conflict, but the active presence of order humming through marrow and minute. Even sparrows fluttering from branch to branch seem to follow an ordained choreography, landing only where invisible notes command. You taste crisp air, and it feels like first fruit harvested from obedience, sweet, unhurried, enough. Nothing inside demands speeding ahead because everything essential has found its place in the day's quiet architecture. The peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. The Philippians 4:7. This guardianship is not passive. It stands like watchtower light, turning restlessness away. Surpassing understanding means you no longer audition arguments to convince yourself of calm. The spirit keeps vigil even while intellect rests. Invite this guarding presence to patrol thought, borders so no stray worry sneaks back under dawn's gate. Ask, what new courage might emerge when peace becomes bodyguard, escorting you through crowded corridors and late day fatigue? Imagine your mind as a quiet garden surrounded by low stone walls. Gates swing open only for thoughts aligned with mercy. Within that enclosure, creativity buds, conversation flows in gentle tones, and decisions spring from clarity rather than impulse. You begin routine tasks, folding linen, replying to messages, but each movement feels like stroke of a calligrapher's brush across white space, deliberate, graceful, irreducible. Even chores radiate dignity because they are nested inside ordered tranquility. A child's laughter downstairs, a colleague's brief text, the kettle's whistle, all blend into a soft chorus affirming that peaceful dawn has room for joyful noise. You answer with measured voice. words buoyant with poise, and listeners sense calm traveling through syllables like sunlight through glass. At midday and evening, this dawn will echo when tension flickers. You'll recall sky flushing rose above still streets and hear the invitation to slow, breathe, realign. Peace is portable. Sunrise stamped it onto spirit, and now you carry its watermark into every hour. Should shadows lengthen, you need only recall dew lifting off grass to remember burdens can evaporate when placed in warming light. Finally, you close eyes for a brief prayer of gratitude, sensing heartbeats sink to steady cadences established since first light. The day stretches before you like a smooth path bordered by lilies, each bloom nodding approval of steps already mapped. You step forward not to maintain control, but to explore serenity's reach. Convinced that divine order will ripple outward, arranging meetings, meals, and midnight dreams until tomorrow's horizon glows anew. Close your eyes and recall the quiet way daylight unfurled, threading mercy through every breath. Remember the moment panic loosened, lists lifted skyward, and guidance slid into place like sunrise over hills. Hold that image as a promise, the same hand that painted dawn still steadies you now. Offer one lingering worry to his keeping, then inhale hope, exhale trust. Let silence wrap around thought like warm shawl, sealing calm into marrow. Stay here, counting 5 slow breaths, and feel peace deepen with each heartbeat.